I just realized that I have reached 50 years of motorcycling. The first time I ever went on a motorbike was when I was 12 years old. I used to work on a farm in Staffordshire, and in one of the sheds was a Matchless. I'm pretty sure it was a Matchless 350. I think it was called a G8. It could have been a 500. But anyway, I used to use this old, I think it was a late 1950s motorcycle to go down the meadows to collect cows. It was either that or an old Morris Minor pickup. Years later, I got hold of a Mobiletti. I to this day I can't remember how I got hold of it, but it didn't work, and I tinkered with it for months trying to get it to go. I used to take it to the top of hills. I used to go to the petrol station, buy a pint of petrol, put it in, and a Mobiletti is sort of like a bicycle with an engine on. I used to pedal it like mad down a hill and try and get the engine to start, and one glorious day it did, and I rode around, probably about 13 or 14 years old, around the country lanes of Staffordshire. When I reached 16, like all youths in my era, in the late 70s, I had in my case, a Batavus Mark IVS, a 50cc moped, which you could drive around with L plates on. I desperately wanted a Yamaha FS1E like a lot of the other lads in the village, but couldn't afford it. But I'd saved up some money from working on the farm, and my mother gave me some money for passing my O-levels. And I got hold of this glorious yellow machine, top speed of about 40 miles an hour. In fact, I think the Fizzy did about 42 miles an hour. It was before they were restricted, probably 1979. And it was that little motorbike that gave me an enormous amount of freedom, and I actually learned a lot from riding it. My late teens, a complete yob, X7, Suzuki X7, the very famous hooligan Yamaha RD 350 LC, two-stroke, bad exhaust, annoying everyone. Came off it once after drinking about 8 pints of Marston's Pedigree. I remember that. A little bit of a break while I was in the Metropolitan Police. Couldn't afford a bike. Well, I had a bike, but it wasn't working. And then later I went out to Hong Kong, and pretty soon afterwards I think the first bike I got was a Yamaha XS 750, which was a bastard of a bike, always breaking down. And then I got a Suzuki GS 750, which was an absolute joy. Went through a few other bikes, and for quite a long time I used to ride around on a Yamaha VMAX, which is a sort of arm-wrenching muscle bike. Lovely bike, perfect for Hong Kong, but not the sort of bike you want if your country has roundabouts. Then I went through the mad years, the racing bikes, the sports bikes. I borrowed, it wasn't mine, a Kawasaki ZXR 750. That's the one with the sort of the green and white one, which used to have the tubes going into the tank. I used to ride that. I got chased by a helicopter once in the UK. Then I had a Suzuki Hayabusa, and I did a British Spec one, 99 British Spec one, which would do 320 kilometers an hour, or at least it said on the clock. I can tick off having ridden, which I did in France, 200 miles an hour. Then a series of, the sports bikes, the late 90s, early 2000s sports bikes. Fireblade, R1, and MV Augusta F4, which is probably one of my most beautiful bikes, but also one of the worst to ride. The R1, which was all specced up with Dimag wheels and braided hoses and Arrows exhaust and all that stuff, was an absolute beast. And those who are following Budget Bike Battle at the moment, well, that is that era of bike. They had no rider aids at all, no ABS, no nothing. And I'll come on to why I think I'm still riding at this age, is because I learned to ride I rode those kind of bikes without any rider aids. Then the era of adventure biking, KTM 990s, KTM 1190 Adventure Rs. Those are the bikes that I have ridden around the world on. Pretty much been to all countries all over the world, but I've also interspersed with riding across Australia on an XT 500, riding across Thailand, Cambodia on a Transalp. riding across Sri Lanka on a XR 250, you know, the Baja with the big lights on the front. All the provinces of China on a CF Moto. Lots of bikes. Oh, and America, the BDRs in America on the new version Honda Africa Twin. So, first top tip, take up motorcycling. I think for us blokes, it helps with mind, body and spirit. It's good for our mental health. It gives us something that we're missing in other parts of our life, you know, the mundane sort of nature of work, the responsibilities of, you know, having a family, and allows us to get out a sense of freedom that you don't get from anything, a sense of being in the moment. I suppose the other thing which I do, which gives me that to an extent, but more short-lived, is paragliding. Because when you're paragliding, it relieves stress because you don't think of anything else except what you're doing. And motorbiking is very much like that. You don't get it from driving a car. So my top tip number one is, if you don't ride a motorbike, learn to ride a motorbike. The second tip, ride within the envelope of your ability. That means whatever level you're at, whatever skill you have or experience, ride just inside the envelope of what you're able to do. And you can increase that envelope, you can expand it by going on training courses. And I thoroughly recommend, whatever kind of rider you are, whether you like racing around on Panigales, or you like riding an enduro bike or a trails bike or motocross, or, you know, touring on a R1300 RT or whatever it is, go on different courses. Even if you're a road biker, do some off-road courses. I've done them in Wales. I did it at the Yamaha off-road course somewhere in Wales off the A470. I did the Honda Africa Twin course, and also one of the best courses I ever did was the Big Bike Sand course, which I did in South Africa. That was to prepare me to ride, you know, the big 990s, and other riders were on GSs and KLRs and Tenerés and that sort of thing, to learn how to ride on sand. So keep improving your skill set, learn, go on courses. I used to be a policeman in the Royal Hong Kong Police, and for a short while I was a traffic police officer, and I was lucky enough to do the police advanced course prior to being deployed as a enforcement and control commander for Hong Kong Island, which is just over there, where I rode around on a Honda CBX 750. A job I loved riding the bike, but traffic is basically accidents and handing out tickets, none of which I enjoyed very much. I can certainly do without ever picking up a helmet with a head inside again, I can tell you that. Always ride defensively, expect the unexpected. There will always be some other idiot on the road. I mean, okay, you may be able to control yourself with, you know, the speed you do and the skill set you have, but you can't control the other people on the road, and there are some absolute idiots out there. All of us have been in our happy space, riding along at 50-60 miles an hour on an A road, and then we've come across a T-junction and there is a vehicle waiting at the give way line. What you must do is make eye contact with the driver. Make sure they are looking at you. And if they are not, or if they're distracted, fiddling around with their mobile phone, which is really common nowadays, arguing, eating, being distracted by kids in the back or whatever, slow right down. Of course, you should have your headlight on. I always have it on main beam in the daytime, so that I am seen. But T-boning into a vehicle pulling out at a give way line is one of the most common accidents. I can tell you that as a former traffic officer, and also when I was in the Metropolitan Police, I saw some horrific accidents. And as I said earlier, you are going to come off worse on a motorbike if you T-bone someone. And depending how fast you're going, the inertia, you know, mass times velocity and all that kind of thing, your body will disintegrate. Of course, goes without saying, always be aware of the road surface. Slippy stuff is where you fall off. And the worst of all is, in my mind, is diesel. Because those who are watching this who've skidded on diesel will know how dangerous it is. Learn to recognize diesel spills on roads. Also learn to recognize where they're likely to be. And it's my experience they're going to be from trucks and buses and vans when they have just pulled out of a filling stop, or it's the first time after filling that they're just about to go up or down a hill. So always be aware, because if you're in a straight line at a steady speed, you may get away with it. But if you do any turning or braking on diesel, there's a good chance you'll come off. Don't learn to ride off-road by watching videos like this or any others on YouTube. Go on a course. Learn how to ride off-road with someone who's an experienced enduro rider, preferably, or a motocross rider or something like that. There are some fantastic places that offer, a course for one day or a long weekend, and it's an enormous amount of fun, and you get a hell of a lot out of it. You'll learn more in 2 days than normal riding over 2 years. If you want to ride your S1000RR or Ducati Panigale or R1 like a cunt, like really fast, learn how to ride like a cunt properly and go to a track and get some instruction from people who are professional cunts. I don't personally agree with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits that have sprung up in places like England and Wales, because I think it's too slow, and you'll spend all your concentration trying to maintain that speed because you're scared of getting a ticket, rather than concentrating on riding. However, I will say that if you ride through built-up areas, particularly areas where there are schools, children, for me in places like Africa where there are animals, just slow right down. Just slow right down. Whether you're a round-the-world adventurer or just like pootling around the English B roads of a weekend, learn how to maintain your bike. Go on a course or follow some instruction or some courses online and learn how a bike works, and learn the basics, like how to perform a service, how to adjust the chain, how to change a wheel. If you understand how a motorcycle works, then you will be sympathetic to that bike, and you will look after things like clutch, gear, tires, chain, etc., and you'll know where their limits are and how you should ride in order to look after those components on a motorcycle. The things you need to do on your motorbike in terms of maintenance, the most important, I think, is tire pressure. It's not a difficult thing. The manual will tell you what the tire pressure should be, and stick to it. All modern tires are good, and I make no recommendations about what type of tire you use for whatever. That's just a personal choice. But what I would say is check what the tire pressure should be for your particular type of motorcycle. And if you're on a off-road bike, an enduro or an adventure bike, if you are going onto the dreaded sand, then just let out the pressure. It increases the footprint of the tire considerably. And so it's, for instance, on my 1190 Adventure R, it's normally about 2.3 bars on the front and 2.6 bars on the back, depending on how much luggage I have. And I will let that down to 1.5 in the front and 1.8 in the back. Coming back to going round corners, or going round corners in one piece, one of the most important pieces of advice I can give is to look through the corner. Don't look where you are, look where you're going to be, and then that's where your bike will go. That's the same if you're on a tar road or if you're riding off-road. If you look down on an off-road bike, that's where you will go. You will go down. Another tip, if you do overcook it into a corner, and we've all done it, haven't we? Don't panic. This advice comes from probably one of the best motorcycle riders in the world, John McGuinness, the famous Isle of Man TT rider. He said, lean it over. Don't panic. Don't fuck around trying to do trail braking or any of that nonsense if you don't know how to do it. In fact, don't touch the brakes at all. Just ride through the corner on your side on your lane and lean it right over. You can probably do it far more than you think you can. For some reason, I don't know why, all of a sudden my YouTube feed is full of videos talking about trail braking. Now, in my 50 years of riding, I've never heard of it. No one ever taught me about it. I certainly didn't learn it on my police advanced motorcycle course. And there's no mystery to it. We've probably all been doing it right from the start, and it's very simple. Okay, this isn't a motorbike, but it's got two wheels and brakes. So you're braking into a corner, right? Instead of just letting out the brake, as you go through the corner, you just ease out the brake. And as I said earlier, lean through the corner, lean more than you would do if you think you've overcooked it. That's it, it's that simple. Your brake's on and you just gradually ease out the brake. It really is that simple. There's nothing to it. Another tip, never drink and ride a motorcycle. Never. I know that you can probably get away with, a pint from the pub before you drive your car home. But if you're on a motorbike, your limit should be 0. And also, if you've got a big ride the next day, don't go out on the lash the night before and get on your bike with a hangover, or even probably with some alcohol in your bloodstream. You want to be 100, have your concentration and your wits about you at all times. So 0 drinking and riding. Another tip when riding is stay hydrated. I know it's annoying to keep stopping to go and have a pee, especially if you're on something like a motorway or something. But it is really dangerous to get dehydrated. I got dehydrated a couple of years back in the Karoo. I'd been riding all day in the desert, and it sort of crept up on me. And because even though I was in a desert and it was hot, I was being cooled by riding through the air, so I just didn't feel it. And then suddenly I started to feel very dizzy, quite ill actually, and started hallucinating. And luckily I stopped and hydrated myself, and it took quite a long time for me to get back to recover from it. In fact, in 1989 I did quite a tough selection, and the year before, on the previous year's selection, one of the candidates actually died from dehydration. So it's a really serious thing, and my only advice is make sure that you keep drinking and be aware of the symptoms of dehydration. Another tip, learn how to do first aid. It could save yours or someone else's life. There are lots of courses you can go on. I've been fortunate, of course, as a police officer in London and Hong Kong. I've been on courses. I had to pass a first aid test to become an paragliding instructor. But even if you don't go on a course, you can look it up. I've seen lessons online on YouTube. And in that regard, have a first aid kit. They're not expensive. Even on my mountain bike, I have one concealed in my frame, and it's been used. I got 14 stitches in my shin once, and I needed to put disinfect it, clean it, disinfect it, and put some compression on. So make sure you buy one. In UK they're in boots for less than a tenner, CVS in the States, Watson's here in Hong Kong. So carry a first aid kit with you. My last tip is keep in shape. Try and stay healthy. That will help your motorbiking enormously. Not just endurance, but enjoyment. I guess, I'm 62 now and I can still run my 1.5 mile AFT in under 9 minutes. I try and stay fit. Doing this kind of thing, mountain biking, running, swimming, hiking, moderate weights. I do all my sort of press-ups and sit-ups and stuff at the pagoda. I don't like going to gyms. It's not my cup of tea anymore. Used to go to them when it was, you know, a sort of a military environment, but I certainly don't want to see Karens in yoga pants and all that kind of stuff. It's put me off my dinner, eh? Yeah, stay fit. It helps your mind, helps your body, wards off sickness, and prevents injury. What can I say? Just do your best. Just do your best that you can. Take some time out just to do something every day, just to get the cardio going. And then you will find you'll be a much better motorcycle rider, whether it's off-road or just pootling along on your Royal Enfield Classic along the B roads. You will find that it improves your motorcycling enormously and your sense of well-being. So my tips after 5 decades of riding continuously with very few accidents, still going, still fit. Anyone got any comments? Feel free to post them underneath. I rarely get any views on my YouTube anyway. The algorithm is sort of geared against me. I'm not monetized. I'm not particularly successful. But those who do find this video, I hope you found the tips useful. And if it helps just one rider, I'm happy. 再见。